Welcome to Prime Time. I'm Susan Hoskins, the director of the Princeton Senior Resource Center. This is a show for people in the prime of life. This month, I am interviewing Fay Reiter. My guest is Fay Reiter. Fay is a social worker with a training in public health, and you are a coach and personal trainer in a lot of areas of wellness at the Robert Wood Johnson Wellness Center. Am I right?
I'm also at the Princeton Fitness and Wellness
And also
Center.
at Princeton Fitness and Wellness. Thank you. And Fay has done some programs for the Senior Resource Center, and we'll be doing one again in the fall. So welcome, Fay.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So we wanted to talk about wellness, and let's just start with what are the basic components that go into wellness? When you talk about a wellness plan, what do you include?
Well, I like to think of wellness in terms of 4 basic areas. Of course, everybody knows that we have to eat well, and exercise is the other component that people would immediately think of. But there's also an emotional, spiritual component and an intellectual component. Mm-hmm. And I think all these basic areas are what comprise wellness from a holistic perspective.
Okay. So it sounds like you're saying that those first 2 areas, the physical, are things that people think about when they go to the wellness center, because they're often going there for exercise programs and there are nutrition programs built in there. But we often don't think about the social, the spiritual, the emotional side of things.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a very important aspect of our health. For example, I've worked with a lot of people with weight problems, and many weight problems are emotionally or spiritually based. Mm-hmm. For example, if we're not getting what we need in those areas, we might turn to food to overcompensate. Mm-hmm. The same can be true of alcohol or other addictions. Mm-hmm. So when we want to make lifestyle changes, we need to look at all aspects of our life.
So is that one of the things you do? You start out sort of looking at what a person's current activities are in those areas? Mm-hmm.
Yes, we go through all these areas. I talk about relationships in addition to what they're eating, whether they're moving, what their social outlets are like, what they're doing to reduce stress, manage their stress, which is a very important aspect of health.
That's a really important one. There's so many things that cause stress in our lives, aren't there? And we just kind of figure that we have to buck up and be tough and carry on.
Yes, and many people feel that there's nothing that they can do to change their lifestyle. They attribute stress to all of the things they have to do, especially time. Despite the fact that throughout the last few decades, because of electronics and the Industrial Revolution, we actually have more time than we've ever had before. It used to take a whole day to cook a meal, gather water, but in fact we feel more time deprived than we ever have. So I like to look at managing energy because I think it's important to look at your life and evaluate where you're spending time and prioritizing that time. For instance, people often say they don't have time to take care of their health, but if you ask them what the most important thing to them is, they'll often say my health.
Mm-hmm. One of the activities that I've often done with people is to have 2 24-hour clocks, a diagram on paper. And the first one is how are you spending your time now, and the other one is how would you like to be spending your time, and looking at then what are the kinds of things that need to shift to go from clock A to clock B.
That's a great exercise, and in fact, from that, it's really important to set goals because often there are things we want to do. We want to make lifestyle changes. We want to be healthier. And there's so much information out there and there's so many areas to look at that unless we actually set goals and hold ourselves to it, it often just gets put off till the next day.
Yeah. What's your feeling about also needing to be responsible to somebody else or to a group? Does it work better to work one-on-one or work in a group? setting for not just setting those goals, but achieving them or continuing to work towards those goals?
Well, it really depends on the person. Some people really enjoy working with a group. They love to hear feedback from other people that may be struggling with the same issues as them. And other people are more private and they prefer to have the one-on-one coaching. I think the advantage to both is to have someone or a group to be accountable for and to.
Right.
Because again, when you set goals, you want to build in that accountability to have checkpoints to make sure that you're achieving those goals.
Right. Like if you set a goal of losing 10 pounds, if you don't lose anything for the first 8 weeks and you think you're going to lose all 10 in the 9th week, you're probably not going to succeed.
Right. And the
you
other
don't change things along the way.
The other thing with goals is you want to make them realistic and achievable.
That's really important.
Not to set a huge goal. People really struggle with that. I mean, I think when they want to make a change, they want it to come very quickly. But it's better to work gradually and in small increments, to break it down.
It's my sense also that in today's society, we want things, like you say, to happen quickly, but also somehow without effort. And so people are often seeking a pill or a magic solution that will make this happen without having to put effort in.
Yeah, well, I think you've really hit on the major underlying problem that most of us face, and that's the issue of effort. We seem to have an aversion to effort. I think it's human nature to gravitate toward the path of least resistance. But effort is what produces results. And I think the other misconception about effort is that you either have it or you don't, similar to willpower. But in fact, you have to build your effort, willpower muscles the same way you would train yourself through lifting weights. You're not going to, if you don't strength train at all, you're not going to start with a heavy 10-pound dumbbell. You're going to start with a smaller weight and gradually work your way up. A lot of people don't realize that you can train yourself to have more effort and to have more willpower, but you need to do it gradually over time, and you get better and better at it.
And that's that feedback too. When you go from a 2-pound weight to a 3-pound weight, you go, wow, look at that, I did it. Or
yes.
You go into the group and you say, hey, I moved from the 2-pound weight to the 3-pound weight, and everybody in the group can say, that's terrific, good job, keep going. And that's part of what helps us keep going on things that are challenging.
Right, and sometimes a group is really great for that, because you really have a fan club.
Yeah.
You know, to cheer you on or to help you when you're not doing so well.
Now, the Senior Resource Center has a very similar philosophy. We really want to offer programs to people across all of these areas, in physical fitness, in cognitive areas, in social areas, in spiritual areas. So we offer a lot of classes that touch on these. And one of the things I've noticed is how important the social piece is in so many of the classes. So people may be coming for art or for a literature class, but it's the connection between people that also makes such a difference. It's knowing that, you know, if you're not there for your Thursday class, somebody in the class is going to call and say, hey, are you okay? And I think that also fits together with some of the stress management that you were talking about, that we're living alone can be a stressor.
Living alone or spending too much time on your computer, isolating, even for young people who have a job that requires they be alone most of the day, or doing something that doesn't involve other people. It's really important to connect with others, and in terms of stress management, talking to other people about the things that bother you, people that you trust, is really helpful in reducing stress. And managing stress is a very important component to health, because when we have chronic stress, meaning the stress that's ongoing every day, as opposed to major stresses when you're in an accident, for instance, our bodies are more designed to handle that kind based on our biology, our ancestors with fight or flight. But when we have chronic stress, we secrete hormones, and these hormones like cortisol, insulin, if we don't have strategies to lower those levels and they remain at elevated levels throughout the day, they can really wreak havoc on our body and contribute to a lot of health problems, heart disease, diabetes, and dementias.
So a lot of those things that we see starting to be chronic in the older adult population are things that started out earlier on in life and are the result of either of things like chronic stress or weight management problems all the way along, poor diet for a long time. So it sounds like one of the things that you would recommend would be starting early.
Absolutely. A lot of people when they get older, they think, they're faced with all these health problems. But in fact, most of these chronic illnesses start very young. And sadly, the obesity problem we're now seeing in our youth is going to result in them getting these chronic diseases at much earlier ages. And for the first time, we're anticipating a reduced life expectancy.
Yeah, I've read that the children today may not live as long as their parents, and that's the first time that there won't be a generation outliving their parents.
Yes, and for instance, I see a lot of teenagers smoking, hard to believe with all that we know, and they think, oh, well, it would take years for me to develop these cancers, but in fact, years accumulate over time, and these things come back to hit you. So the earlier you can start taking care of your health, the better. But at the same time, if you've, not been very diligent about taking care of your health, it's never too late to start. It's never too late to start strength training, eating well, exercising. At any age, there are always enormous benefits from improved lifestyle habits.
I was talking with my son recently and complimenting him on his choice of menu, and that for a teenager, he does pretty well at the choices he makes compared with many of his peers. And he said he attributed it to his third grade teacher who had done a unit on nutrition. And he said, I always make sure that I have a vegetable and a protein and a carb, but he also knows what fits in those categories. And he, not a lot of sugary drinks and not a lot of snacks.
I'm glad you raised that because I think education is really valuable and helpful for people, and people respond to it a lot more than you would think. And I'm very happy that it's being offered in a lot of our school systems, and I hope school systems in other parts of the country are also offering these programs, as well as physical education, which is really important.
Now we're talking about education. One of the things that I find with some of the older adults that I work with is that they know what they should do, but it's really hard for them to put together good nutritious meals when they're cooking for one. What kinds of things do you suggest?
Well, the first thing I like to suggest is that you eat mindfully and pay attention to what you're eating, the selection of your food, and how you're going to eat it. So, for instance, a lot of people who live alone feel, oh, why bother? Even people who have lived with a family and then their children are grown, perhaps their husband has died, they used to cook beautiful meals, then they're just opening up a can of soup. But in fact, you should always take time to prepare a nutritious and nice looking meal and set a nice table. A lot of people who eat alone eat in front of the television, which is really not a good idea because you're not going to be paying attention to what you eat, and you might eat more than you need. And I would suggest...
I know some people who have dinner buddies.
That's a great idea. I was just going to say, I would suggest that you try to eat with other people. There are lots of people who would like to share a meal with you. You can do a potluck, or some centers have cooking classes where you can go and actually share a meal. You can start an eating club, a dinner club, where everybody in it rotates houses and you eat together. And places like the senior centers in various communities offer community-based lunch programs as well, which are a great opportunity. And now a lot of the supermarkets offer low-cost prepared food. You can meet people there. Usually there are tables to eat at, or you can eat outside in the nice weather. I know Princeton University has some nice tables outside. Pack your dinner up and meet a friend.
Well, I know that that a lot of people do that over breakfast. You know, that
Uh-huh.
a lot of the places in town that are open for breakfast have a regular group that's there every morning for coffee and a bagel or whatever. And it is that, again, that social connection that's so important. And if you have breakfast with somebody, then maybe it doesn't feel as lonely to have lunch alone or whatever, to mix it up during the week. Let me go back to the stress management piece and ask you what kinds of things you recommend for stress management,
Well,
bringing down those cortisol levels.
Well, exercise, that's
Okay.
the number one. And, you know, exercise really is the magic bullet in terms of health. I want to make sure I make that understood because, you know, if you exercise and on a regular basis, you will prevent virtually every chronic disease that, you know, we are currently suffering from. The other thing is that it does reduce stress. So when you exercise, you secrete the good hormones, and the stressful hormones are reduced in level, and you have a general feeling of well-being. Exercise also prevents depression, which really does create stress. Some other really good things you could do to reduce stress is meditation or relaxation. And, you know, many studies have now been done on meditation. The Dalai Lama has been very instrumental in making sure that we can study these Buddhist monks, and we've seen significant changes in the brain when we do scans on people. You need to quiet your mind. We have these thoughts. Some of the Buddhist literature will call it the monkey mind. We have these thoughts all day, and we think we can fix everything, and it goes round and round and round, and we really are overstimulated as a culture. Everywhere you go, there's sound and televisions, and you go on the internet and something flashes up. So meditation is really simple. You just can sit and try to quiet your mind. A lot of people are intimidated by it. They think it's some elaborate practice, but in fact, it's simply being present, trying to focus on your breath and quieting your mind. That's not to say you're not going to think about anything, but it's a process of trying to quiet down. The other thing that can really help, in addition to socializing, is getting organized. Disorganization creates stress, as does clutter. For instance, if you've ever taught any workshops on health and wellness and you bring up the issue of clutter, it just brings up an enormous amount of issues for people. Clutter is very stressful because it's stuck energy, it hangs around you, you feel overwhelmed by it, and it accumulates to the point where you have too much to do. So you want to get on top of your clutter and manage it every day.
So often the inside reflects the outside, or the outside reflects the inside, so that if your environment is cluttered, you have that sort of cluttered feeling inside of, like you say, being disorganized, being not sure where things are or how you're going to handle things. And so getting control over the outside can sometimes help bring calm to the inside. Sometimes doing the meditation on the inside can help make it clear where to start to deal with some of the outside clutter in your life, whether it's piles of paper or whether it's problems that are unsolved. Now, some of the things that we're talking about, I'm thinking of some of the folks that we see who don't make it into the center, where it's hard to come in and take a yoga class or take an exercise class. Or I'm thinking of people of all ages. We have young parents who are taking care of children at home. We have caregivers throughout the lifespan who can't leave home because of their caregiving responsibilities. Are there some tips that you have for how people who are home can address these 4 pillars of wellness?
Yes, there are a massive number of videotapes and DVDs available on exercise, nutrition. There are classes that you can take watching DVDs. There's a channel, Fit TV, offers television programming with different classes throughout the day. And then many programs offer online options for taking classes. Some weight management programs offer an online option. There's blogging, and there's connecting through the web and telephone. Some people talk on the telephone. You can even have coaching through the telephone. So you can create a whole in-home, or invite some other people over to exercise with you.
Yeah. It sounds like that might also be a place where working with a coach is helpful, because you could, I would assume that someone meets with you periodically, but a lot of the work that they do, they're doing on their own, whether it's at the club or in their own home.
Right, and some coaches or trainers will come to your home.
Yeah. Now, how do you tell the difference? If you're going online and you're looking at some of these online courses or blogs, advice, how do you tell the scientifically based or the good ones from the shams?
That's a very good question, because there's so much on the internet, and especially when people are researching health and disease. You want to look for sources, articles that have sources that are good sources. For instance, if it cites medical studies or a specific book, and you can look at the book online and see who the author is, see what he's done, see what institution he represents, and what kind of work he's involved with. So that's a really important thing, and it's extremely important with supplements.
Yeah.
Because supplements are not regulated by the FDA.
Right.
So you don't want to just go out and take a supplement without thoroughly researching it.
People can spend a lot of money on something which isn't beneficial and can
Exactly.
even be harmful.
Yes, it can be.
But I often tell people for the medical things to look for sites like the Mayo Clinic or WebMD that are scientifically based sites rather than, you know, Joe's medical advice.
Yes, you know, the ones that you might not be as willing to trust are when there's just a person's name at the end and it's their own practice.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I want to make sure we talk about this, one of the things that you and I have been talking about is you're coming to the Senior Resource Center and offering a class this fall on brain and memory health, because it's an area of a lot of interest, and again, one of these wellness topics that people need to address early, that I think the research shows that your mental capacity peaks in your 20s and you lose some capacity after that. But we also know from recent research that brain cells don't just die, and you don't just have this steady line down, that there are things we can do to stay cognitively and mentally sharp. And that they involve these same 4 pillars of stress management and social activity and cognitive activity and physical activity. Can you talk a little bit about some of the ideas that you will be bringing to that course this fall on Brain Boot Camp?
Yes, I'm really excited about our Brain Boot Camp because all the research that has been done on the brain for the last several years is really showing us that the brain is far more malleable than we thought. We used to think that it was fixed and that after a certain age you just lose brain cells and it's inevitable that there be this decline. But in fact, we're now finding that that's not true, that you can improve your brain health at any age. Exercise can actually rebuild cells. So just as with muscle, if you don't exercise, you will lose muscle, but if you do exercise, you can build muscle, and you can also build bone through exercising. So there are lots of ways to exercise your brain, and these 4 areas basically cover it: by socializing more, by trying a new skill, learning a foreign language, by challenging yourself. And there are many other ways of improving your brain health as well at any age. So those are the things that we're going to be talking about.
So my understanding is that you'll be describing some of these things, helping people come up with plans, again, setting those goals, and teaching some of the kinds of skills or activities that people could engage in.
Right, we're going to be creating individual plans and also empowering people to take charge of their health and know that your brain and your mind are simply a part of the whole body. So we'll be learning various different strategies.
That sounds great. We're looking forward to it.
I am too.
You know, I think we do find it harder to learn new things. And one of the things that I've learned is that you do need to keep challenging your brain with new problems to solve, with new skills, new learning, that you can't just do the same old thing. So if you've been great at doing crossword puzzles all your life, you're going to be using that same internal crossword puzzle dictionary. You won't really be bringing new information in the same way as if you started doing math puzzles, for example, which uses a different part of your brain.
Exactly. And I think it's important to recognize that when you learn new skills, you're not expected to do them perfectly, but it's actually the practice of learning and pushing yourself, which comes back to the issue of effort. Effort is really the most important thing for our brains and our bodies, to keep pushing forward with the effort throughout our lives, and to start doing that at an early age. Because many very young children are not physically active. A sedentary lifestyle is really the most deleterious to all aspects of our health. And we see in young children, if they're just watching video games all day, they'll lose interest in movement. But if we get them back out moving, it comes back. And the same is true at any age.
Right. So those are some of the same kinds of issues that come up later in life as people have some mobility challenges and so on. It's harder to get up and move, but balance is critical. Movement, getting your blood flowing, getting those chemicals flowing in your body is really important. And my sister-in-law is a physical therapist, and one day when I was visiting, she was working up a program for some of her cardiac rehab patients, and she was setting it up so that, because all of her patients were couch potatoes, watching television all day, and she set it up so that the exercises were either a 30-minute commercial long or a 30-second commercial or a 60-second commercial, so that they could do them. And that idea, well, I don't have time, I can't fit this in. But sometimes it's as simple as, doing weightlifting during the commercials of your favorite comedy show, or just remembering to put those nutritious things into a meal, that it doesn't have to be a whole new 2-hour commitment at the club or something. Exactly.
Setting realistic goals and looking at, breaking the larger projects down into smaller ones.
Great. Well, this sounds very exciting, Fay, and thank you so much for this conversation today, and we really look forward to Brain Boot Camp. We hope people will come to the center and take that class with you and learn more about the kinds of things that they can do to improve their wellness, both for their brain and for their general well-being. So thank you for joining me.
It was great to be here.